Hare Krishna. Today we are going to study the verse number 24 of chapter number 5 of Bhagwat Gita as it is. In the previous verse, Krishna said that before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the forces of desire and anger, then only he is a yogi and is happy in this world. Tolerating the urges means to resist the attractions of this material world. We learnt that there are 6 kinds of urges, like the force of talk, the force of anger, force of mind, force of stomach, force of tongue, and the force of genitals. And all these urges are extremely powerful, and it is almost next to impossible for an ordinary person to control these forces. This is why Krishna, very mercifully, is going to give us the clue so as to how to control these urges in a very easy manner. And this is the main theme of today's verse. It's the most important advice to us from Krishna. So I request you to watch the video till the end. In this video, we will learn how to turn inwards within our heart and become eternally happy and satisfied in this world, and after leaving this present body, attain the Supreme. I will again repeat, in this video, we will learn how to turn inward within our heart and become eternally happy and satisfied in this world, and after leaving this present body, attain the Supreme. Now to begin, let us recite the verse number 24. Yo antah sukhah antah aramah tatha antah jyotir evah sayogi brahma nirvaram brahma bhuto adhigacchati. Yo antah sukho anta araramah tathantar jyoti evah yah sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto adhigacchati. Yo antah sukho anta araramah tathantar jyotir eva yah sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto adhigacchati. Krishna says that one whose happiness is within, who is active within. Yo antah sukho anta araramah, who rejoices within and is illumined within. Tathantah jyotir eva yah, is actually the perfect mystic. Sa yogi brahma nirvanam. He is liberated in the Supreme and ultimately he attains the Supreme. Brahma bhuto adhigacchati. Krishna says that one whose happiness is within, who is active within, who rejoices within and is illumined within, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme and ultimately he attains the Supreme. Let us start reading the Anvay given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnavon ki jai. Yah, who, antah sukha, happy within the self. Antah araramah, who enjoys within the self. Tatha, and. Antah jyoti, vision is directed within. Eva, certainly. Yah, who. Sah, that. Yogi, yogi. Brahma nirvanam, through realization of Brahmanand, that is the bliss of the spirit soul, which is the emancipation from material existence. Brahma bhut, situated in transcendence. Adhigacchati, he attains. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that a yogi who derives happiness exclusively from within the self and who delights only within the self and whose vision is solely directed within the self is situated in transcendence, that is, the Brahma. Further, Chakravarti Pad says that he attains the bliss of that transcendence in emancipation from the material existence. To explain this, Chakravarti Pad says that for those who are untouched by the conditions of the material world, for them, the direct experience of the Absolute Spirit is itself a pleasure. This is why Sri Bhagavan has used the word Antah, which means within. And those who achieve bliss within their inner self, they derive pleasure only in the self, and thus their vision is always focused within. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that in this verse, Sri Bhagavan has explained that how a person can easily control the strong urges of lust and greed. It is explained by the example of the yogis who experience happiness in their realization of the self, and after the realization of the self as spirit soul, they take pleasure within the self, which is in communion with the Supreme Soul. And such a self-realized person's vision is always focused on the nature of the self, which is eternal, and he takes shelter of doing all his prescribed duties for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. And by doing this, he attains a liberated platform and eventually attains the supreme abode after being liberated from his present body. Such yogis become totally indifferent to the mundane sensual activities of lust, greed, which further leads to anger. Rather, they experience eternal joy within the self, which is known as Brahma Nirvana. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur says that a sannyasi who is free from lust, greed, and has control over the mind, and who knows Atma Tattva, that is, the science of the self, very quickly attains full realization of Brahma Nirvana. And Brahma Nirvana is the blissful platform of spiritual liberation. Such a self-realized person gets to know the real and unreal objects in this material world, and he worships Bhagavan by selflessly offering him the results of his work. That is, he is a Nishkam Karma Yogi. And such a Nishkam Karma Yogi is always situated in Brahma while living in this present material body and after being liberated from the present body. He is sure to attain the Supreme Lord. This state is called Brahma Nirvana, in which the person, while in the material body, is eternally happy, and after leaving the material body is certain to attain the Supreme Lord. In very simple words, it is said that a person who is self-realized, which means that he has the complete knowledge that he is not his body, rather he is a spirit soul, and his eternal nature is to serve the Supreme, and that the Supreme resides in his heart in the form of Paramatma. In addition to this, he also knows that in this material world everything is temporary, and anyone who gets attracted towards the material things is bound to have lust, greed, and anger, which leads to endless miseries of repeated birth, death, old age, and disease. This is why he is always focused within himself and derives pleasure in the company of the Supreme Lord, who is, was, and will always be with him. And he also knows that the Supreme Lord is his eternal well-wisher. Having this knowledge, it becomes very easy for him to tolerate the urges of the material senses, as he is always enjoying the transcendental bliss within himself. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur ki jai. Now, let us read the purport given by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anant Koti Vaishnavon ki jai. Prabhupada says that unless one is able to relish happiness from within, how can one retire from the eternal engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness? Srila Prabhupada says that it's just superficial happiness. Very clearly, Prabhupada says that the enjoyment that is available in this material world is a superficial and artificial happiness because it has a beginning and an ending. And to attain such material happiness, the person has to go through many painful experiences for earning money. And after attaining the material things, it does not last eternally, because everything and every person in this material world is temporary. But it is not easy for a person to leave the desires to attain the material joys. Srila Prabhupada clearly says that it can only happen when a person has tasted a higher taste. Then only the lower taste can be left. And the higher taste is the joy of being in continuous company of the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada says that the Supreme Lord resides in the heart of every living entity. But if only the person gets to know about the presence of the Supreme Lord and his relationship with the Supreme Lord and the nature of the Supreme Lord, then he dwells in the transcendence and can very easily tolerate the forces of sense enjoyments. Prabhupada further says that a liberated person enjoys happiness by factual experiences. Factual experiences means real happiness, and the real is only Krishna, because he is permanent, and rest everything in this material world is impermanent. So it is not real. And one who knows that Krishna is the Supreme God and he himself is a part and parcel of him, and moreover Krishna is always with him in the form of Paramatma, and he experiences the joy of being with Krishna, is truly a happy person. He can therefore sit silently at any place and enjoy the activities of life from within. He knows that he is a spirit soul and is eternal like the Supreme Soul, and the Supreme Soul is with him, so he doesn't hanker for anything material because he has tasted the spiritual joy which is permanent and endless. Such a liberated person no longer desires external material happiness. He only takes material things to maintain his body, and he offers every material thing to Krishna, knowing fully well that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and everything belongs to him and should be offered to him. So he never has an attitude of greed, lust, which leads to anger. And this state is called Brahma Bhut. And attaining this state, one is assured of going back to Godhead. That is, back to home, Golok, Vrindavan, Dham. Now it's very important to know that who are the people who become eligible to go back to Godhead. The people who delve deep inside themselves and enjoy the transcendental bliss of being in communion with the Supreme Lord, they go back to Godhead. Now let us understand that how people learn this art of being satisfied and happy within themselves. Srila Prabhupada says to learn this art, one needs to become a Nishkam Karma Yogi, which means that doing all the prescribed duties only for the happiness of Krishna and not doing anything for one's own sense gratifications. By repeated practice of Nishkam Karma Yoga, the doer becomes purified and gets to know his real self, and also gets to know that Krishna is always with him in his heart, and Krishna is his ultimate well-wisher and permanent companion. This knowledge helps him to become more and more self-realized, and gradually all the urges of the material world fades away. When a superior happiness is experienced, then automatically the lower joys fade away. The joy of being in communion with the Supreme Lord is eternal, and it has a spiritual experience. And the happiness of the material world is first of all short-lived, and secondly, it involves a lot of pain and misery. So the self-realized person never gets attracted to anything in this material world. My Shiksha Guru, His Grace Harimohan Das Prabhuji, gives a beautiful analogy. He says that can a fridge ever enjoy the sweets and ice cream which is kept in it? The answer is no. And the reason is this, that one material thing cannot enjoy the other material thing. Fridge is a material thing, and sweets or ice cream is also a material thing. Similarly, our body is a material thing without the spirit soul, and without the presence of the spirit soul, the body and the senses cannot enjoy anything in this material world, and material cannot reach to the spirit soul because it is material. The spirit soul only enjoys in the company of the Supreme Lord, who is as Paramatma and has nothing to do with whatsoever in this material world is available. And a wise person knows that I am spirit soul and I am a part and parcel of the Supreme Krishna, and I have no connection with the material world, for the simple reason that I am eternal like the Supreme Lord, and everything in this material world is temporary, which has a beginning and an end. So he never gets attracted by anything or any person of this material world. Srila Prabhupada explains to us with a very simple example of a small boy. Prabhupada says that when a small boy goes to the marketplace with his parents and sees various shops of toys and food items like samosa, momos, chow mein, rasgulla, ice cream, he wants to have them. But when the mother says that it's not good for his health as it is not of good quality, and tells him that she would prepare for him everything at home, which will be clean, hygienic and tasty as well. And when the mother serves him all the kinds of tasty dishes like chola bhatura, momos, fried rice, chili paneer, dosa, etc., etc., after offering it to Krishna, then gradually the boy loses all his interest and inclination for the outside food. So we see that when a small boy tastes good home-cooked Krishna Prasadam, then he completely loses all kinds of attraction towards the outside food. In the same manner, when a person who has relished the higher taste from within will never be interested in anything lower than that, but it only happens after relishing the higher taste. Now I'm sure that we have properly understood that only a self-realized person is completely indifferent to all the attractions of this material world. Just the same way as when a child is properly fed at home with delicious Krishna conscious prasadam, then he never gets attracted towards any roadside food. Now, we all know that only a Krishna conscious person can tolerate the force of desire and anger, as he is always enjoying in transcendental bliss, and such a person is already liberated while being in this present material body and is certain to attain the Supreme after leaving the present body. This stage is called Brahma Bhut, which means always enjoying the company of the Supreme Brahma and ultimately attaining Brahma Nirvana. So it is both ways win-win situation. Being in this material world, he is liberated because he is always focused within himself, and after leaving the body, he is certain to attain the supreme abode. Now it is up to us what we choose. But I am sure that all of us would want to become happy eternally, and for that we need to train ourselves by doing Nishkam Karma, and then in our old age we can sit in one place and enjoy within ourselves and won't get affected by external happenings of this material world. We all know that old age is very pathetic. The body becomes old and has so many diseases in it, and everyone starts distancing. But if one is trained in Krishna consciousness from young age itself, then that person is happy within himself. This is the ultimate advice of Krishna for each one of us, which we have got in today's verse, that is verse number 24 of chapter number 5. Now we shall meet the next week with a new verse where Krishna further appreciates 4 more qualities of a self-realized person. I thank His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and my Shiksha Guru, His Grace Harimohan Das Prabhuji, for explaining to us the most secretive knowledge of Bhagwat Gita in such simple manner. I thank you for listening to the Bhagwat Gita shlokas so attentively and with firm conviction that what Krishna is saying is the ultimate good for each one of us. Please keep chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Watch the video again and again. Share it with others, as this is the only way we can do good to ourselves and good to others. Hare Krishna.